There's going to be a really, really quick introduction to the Fully Charged Plus podcast because it's all contained. It's all contained in the actual podcast that I recorded. This is with Ricky Roy. He's just amazing. He is our new North America presenter. And I'm not sure when, you'll see him very soon on the Fully Charged show. He will be doing a review of the Rivian pickup truck, which is extraordinary, and he's brilliant, and it's all too good to be true, and he's such a lovely guy. We've never met. This is what's so weird. I've never actually met Ricky, so I will meet him later this year when we're in San Diego, but which is where he lives. And it's, for those of you who've not been to San Diego, it's quite a nice place to live. There's a lot worse places in the world that you could live than San Diego. It's very pleasant. I've only been there a couple of times. I don't know it well, but I have been there a few times. So this is really good. But just before we start, I just do want to do the old. I just want to talk about My Energy because they are a remarkable company. I don't want to go on about it too long, but it's just that this is why I'm so thrilled that they sponsor this show. That I actually am using their equipment every day. 99% of the time, I don't even think about it. It's just completely unconscious because it does everything for me. It's just a really intelligent house energy operating system. And it's really worth going to have a look at myenergy.com or .co.uk. Good question. I'm going to look it up right now. I forgot which one it is. My ENERGI. My Energy. It is .com. myenergy.com. I knew it was. I just wanted to be double sure. I didn't want to didn't want to send you on a wrong route. So the Zappi charger, which we featured a couple of times, is a brilliant piece of equipment. I've used it today. My wife's car was charging on the Zappi charger from solar only today. Added about 40 miles, I think, of range on the car from 100% solar. No other electrons were used. And they had traveled a huge distance, probably 4 meters from the solar panels to the charger. So very, very low losses in the transmission. And also the eddy, which is this little box in our airing cupboard, as we call it, next to the water heater. I don't even know what the eddy does. Honestly, I don't. It knows what's going on. It heats the water when there's excess solar, which is not being used anywhere else, or it puts it in the Tepio boiler into the heat battery, or it's running the electric cooker or the batteries. It just knows what to do. It's ever so clever. I don't even know. I can't really talk about it with any authority because it just does stuff, which is a bit. I can override it if I want to, so I can turn the hot water off if we don't need it. But if there's a lot of it, I've done this where I've gone away, turned the hot water off because we're not here, we're not going to use it. Come back 2 days later, the whole tank's full because there's so much solar, it's heated all the water. Kept it, may as well put it in there rather than it's not costing anything. So we've got a load of hot water when we come back. Thank you. So it's overridden me. It's going, well, the old fool, he's turned the hot water off. We'll put it back on. We'll put it back on for him. He doesn't know what he's doing. So that's My Energy. They're an amazing company, British company. They are now starting to export their products. They're made in this country. They've grown incredibly fast and they're doing amazing things. And they've got amazing things in the pipeline. My Energy is putting the I back into British innovation. My Energy is putting the I back into inventing the future. My Energy is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergy.com and help to spark the green revolution. My Energy, driving the charge to a greener future. Ricky, it's so exciting to be doing not just this podcast, but everything else. I'll tell you, I'm going to let you in on a little family secret. So I was watching the rough cut of your Rivian review that you've done for us, which is just brilliant. In the kitchen, I was on my laptop and it was off full screen. And my wife walked past I will tell you now, she's not overly interested in either fully charged or electric vehicles or anything. That's not her shtick. She drives an electric car and she loves it, and that's the end of it. And she just looked over my shoulder and she just said, like in so casual passing, you can get rid of everyone else, including you. That's the man you need to front the show. So there you go. That you got a very good review right off the bat.
I'll tell you that is that's really hard to believe, to be honest with you. What's funny is this is our first episode with Fully Charged.
Yeah.
But I've been making videos and I've been reviewing cars. I've done stuff like this before. But even my camera person, who's my brother-in-law, his name's Juan. So it's Juan and I. And when we were getting ready to come out for this filming, we were genuinely like nervous or stressed out. Oh. It was as if we were. It felt like going from the minor leagues to the major leagues, right? That's how we felt. Juan, the night before, he's like, we're not going to be good enough. I was like, well, we have to be good enough because it's tomorrow. But what's funny is like that's the aura, that's the halo of Fully Charged, and why I'm so honored. I mean, there are a ton of people who do amazing work here in North America, and so I'm just excited to be a part of it. And it is a big deal for us, and we're super thrilled. I love Dan. I always joke with Dan that here at Two Bit da Vinci, we need a Dan. I think is what I need as well.
Oh, absolutely. He's incredible.
Yeah. So it's just been a pleasure. And I met Imogen, who did an episode on Aptera.
Great. Oh, good. She's an extraordinary. She's a force of nature. That girl. She's extraordinary.
She really is. Her level of preparation and stuff was. I mean, we were taking notes, and she's just a consummate professional. And that's kind of how I feel. Is that I feel like we have to bring our A game because that's Fully Charged, baby. But
you can then step back a bit and then just watch me for falling over and being really rubbish, and you go, we don't have to worry too much. Well, no, because I mean, Jack, Helen, Imogen, and yourself, and Andy, all the people we've had working for us, and also Elliot in China and DK in South Korea. They're all extraordinary. And I mean, I am long in the tooth, and I've been doing something along the lines of that for many years in the UK. But you just blew me away. You were you don't need to worry. You were so, I'm not going to, I love the American term, I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, but which always sounds a bit odd. It's a bit of an odd term. But, I was really impressed. My wife was really blown away. I mean, she would hate me saying that because she actually likes Jack and Imogen and everybody else that works on the show. So it's not, but she was very impressed.
She's just being nice because I know that's not true because those guys are amazing. Jack, he kind of sets the bar when it comes to like reviewing the car. And, absolutely. And you're selling yourself way short. You're amazing. I remember watching your earliest stuff. Your pilot episode I probably watched it 8 or 9 times now.
Oh my goodness.
I think you set the tone for a lot of what a lot of people do on YouTube. Like you brought your passion and your charisma to do this. And I mean, honestly, like a lot of this is a sentiment that many of us share, people who do electric car reviews and things of that nature. You kind of pioneered it. You're the guy who, even before you had a team and this big company and stuff, you were just Robert Llewellyn and you kind of started this whole thing off. So that's an honor of honors to be doing this.
You're very kind. I mean, I think because when I look back, it was a very peculiar journey. So it was actually in 2000, I came to Los Angeles to I think it was called a New Media Expo or something like that. It was held at a big exhibition center in Los Angeles, which I don't know where it was. I don't know. It was a big place anyway, and it was kind of dominated by Apple, and Apple were presenting Final Cut Pro, and it was very exciting, and the possibilities were fascinating. And this was, as everyone described it then, TV on the internet. That was what they were selling. There was that kind of, oh my God, TV on the internet. That's so exciting. But when they did the demonstration, like you see Steve Jobs, where he shows how the iPhone works, this was a few steps down from that, because they said the guy was sort of sitting behind a big, Apple computer and saying, this is how Final Cut works. You just put the cut in here. And suddenly the screen, it was just the spinning ball. Nothing happened. We waited minutes. People started laughing. There was slow hand claps. They unplugged everything and replugged. The fact that at a huge, and there would have been 1,000 people watching that, very excited, and the whole thing fell over. early days. But
the greatest challenge in the world is doing a live tech demo.
Horrible. But I mean, what it was I was quite excited by the prospect, because having worked in television even then, maybe 20 years, the fact that it would be possible at some point for someone like you or I to effectively make a TV show, have it broadcast around the world, is still, I have to remind myself, that is pretty amazing, because that was, in 2000, it was a dream. It was totally impossible. And a lot of the software that I remember seeing on display there was how to crush video footage down to a tiny size, so the size of a postage stamp, so that you could watch it on your dial-up modem. It was just it's very hard, because that's 22 years ago or something. It's not that long. It's quite a long time.
A lot has changed.
A lot has changed. Years. Yeah. Because what I don't know, Rick, is because I've watched lots and lots of your videos, and we talked about you for a long time here, even though you may not know it, but we were very impressed. But I want to know how you got into doing that, and what inspired that, and what your experience was pre-YouTube.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm really curious. I love trying new things. So it's funny you mentioned Apple and Steve Jobs. I went to school for mechanical engineering, and I was working at an aerospace engineering company. When Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone, I thought that was cool. Right. But then the next year, he unveiled the App Store. And he was talking about how you could grab a laptop and build the world's next great game or app, and people can buy it from you, right? That just changed everything. I started spending all my time after work learning how to write code, because I've never had any classes or anything. So it took years. It was a lot of sacrificed nights and weekends and stuff. But after a couple of years, I had a couple apps in the App Store. Never made a lot of money or anything. I was always very nerdy. I made apps that, everybody wanted to take pictures of food, and I was building calculators to help you understand your mortgage and paying it off early and stuff. That was one of the ones I made. And I made an astronomy app, a couple of others. Wow. But I learned a lot. Then I ended up going to work for some software companies. And so I had, probably about a 10-year software career. And partway through that, YouTube just kind of jumped out as the next big thing. I kind of felt that making videos on the internet on various topics, typically we do educational content, but anything really was going to be a new frontier. And I wasn't early by any means. Your first video was 7 years before that or something. I started in 2017, 2018.
Right.
But I saw that it was going to be really interesting. And again, I had no background in it, just like I didn't have any background in software, but I wanted to try it. So our very first videos were very bad, and we had no direction. We made videos about woodworking and cameras, just whatever random stuff. We had no direction. And then finally, one day, I had gotten solar panels in 2011. And so I made a video about how my panels had just turned 5 years old. So it was 5 years later, what I've learned and all the money I've saved and kind of the data on that, the degradation in the panel production. And I made that video. It actually didn't do well right away, but something crazy happened 5 or 6 months later. It just started blowing up. That video just took off. And just out of nowhere, suddenly it had 1 million views after a while. I think it has 2.5 million views now. So then I realized, clearly there's an interest in sustainability, but really it's kind of the data and not just, like a salesperson coming into your door, but instead 5 years later, here's what I learned.
Yeah.
I've since made a 10 years later video, which also has done really well and continues to do well. So that was kind of the spark of inspiration to do sustainability. So we've been covering electric vehicles, solar, various types of renewable energy technologies, batteries, things like that. So that's kind of the nature of the channel, and that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And I mean, that's also it's I think it's a generational thing as well, that you could see the launch of the iPhone and then the launch of the App Store. Because when I heard, I remember that presentation. I remember watching that and saying, "Oh, I don't know what that means, but it sounds good." That was the full extent of my reaction to the App Store. Whereas you understood it, and it is that difference. I mean, here's an example. I think I was 9 years old, and we went on a school trip, the most boring school trip I've ever been on. because sometimes we go to a castle where there were battles, or we go to a amazing museum or something. This time we went to see a computer in London. It was at IBM's, I now know, IBM's original building in London. And we all had to go downstairs, and there were two men in white coats with clipboards standing in front of some boxes with lights on. I mean, it was so boring, and they talked for too long. And that's what a computer was for my generation of children. You know, and it was huge. The building was big, and it was an enormous, I guess, a mainframe computer. It would have been mid-1960s. And so that just isn't in my world. You know, I've had to learn computers as an adult. You know, whereas you would have had them from, I'm assuming, from early on in your life. They would have been around. And my children have the same thing. But they're not scared of them. I'm still quite nervous. You know, when you were saying, send me a calendar invite, I was going, I don't know how to do that. But that is great that you jumped at that. But then, you know, that is the beauty of the kind of the freedom that YouTube gave. Because before YouTube, I was putting videos on through Apple, through Apple. It wasn't Apple TV, through iTunes, I guess it was then, because there was no restriction on the length of the videos. And then when YouTube came along, I think originally you could only put on something that was like 4 minutes long. And I was doing longer form things. And I actually, eventually, that was the advantage I had in this country of having been on the TV for many years, that the guy who was running YouTube in London was a fan of Scrap Heap and Junkyard Wars. And he showed me around the Google headquarters, and then he did something on his laptop, took about a quarter of a second, and then I could put a YouTube video on of 10 hours if I wanted to. There was no limit, you know. So that's what kind of launched what I was doing then. But then, I mean, because what I love as well is that you cover so much more than just cars. Because I think electric cars clearly are critically important and a vital change in the world that we live in. But I think what I've experienced, and I don't know if you've had the same experience, is once I drove an electric car, it kind of opened a door to understanding, you know, the energy system, the transportation system, the oil industry, the automotive, and it wasn't altogether a good thing. It was kind of annoying, because before then I had a car, I'd go to the garage, I'd pay lots of money, I'd put petrol in it, I'd drive it. That was kind of end of relationship. And suddenly I then had to think, where does the electricity come from? Where does the gasoline come from? Why? Oh God, it's such a huge topic. I mean, did you go through that change when you first drove an electric car and go, oh, hang on, this is a big shift?
Yeah, I've always been a car enthusiast, even before electric vehicles. And for me, I've always loved performance, you know, sport sedans, like, you know, BMW M3s, M5, things like that. But I've always been very reluctant to buy one because I fear that they're very unreliable. When you push the internal combustion engine to its limit, when you get more power out of it, you add a turbocharger, you inherently make a vastly more delicate product that's more likely to break. Like those, you know, there's always a joke that some of these old BMW M5s and stuff, they had horrible issues. Like, I mean, we're talking like $25,000 complete engine rebuild type things. And I didn't want to deal with that, right? So then the other option was get a Honda Civic, which I was always a big Honda fan before electric vehicles. And don't even get me started on how disappointed I've been with Honda in the EV world. Yeah. Ridiculous. But get a Honda Civic. That car will last forever. Very boring, very slow. So that was always a dichotomy. Then comes the electric car. And so now I have a Tesla Model 3 Performance. And I have a car with like 500 horsepower, which is faster than any gas car I've ever owned. It is a fraction of the price to operate as a Prius. I have 45,000 miles on it now, and I have rotated tires. I've done nothing.
Right, yeah.
And I have no plans of doing anything. At the rate I'm driving, and here in San Diego, I'll never do a brake change. I never even use my brakes. You could take them. I probably don't even need them. So that dichotomy of supercar and economy car in one package there's no way you can do that with a gas car.
No,
it just can't be done. Like the engineering of trying to get 500 horsepower out of a gas engine just results in an engine that is very finicky. And requires a ton of money and upkeep. And if you're rich, fine, that's great. But if you're not, I don't want to be sinking thousands of dollars into keeping a car up, because most of the time you're just sitting in traffic, right? So it was that dichotomy that just drove me, that just completely sold it for me. And then that's kind of how it started. And then, of course, as you drive it more and more, you realize we don't need to fight wars. We don't need to do all the things that we do for oil. Oil is just it's caused more. I've always said oil is probably, there's some products that we need oil for. I'm not saying that we're going to get rid of it entirely, but it's caused a lot of suffering around the world. Yeah. And it's always been kind of at the heart of so much conflict and stuff. And it's like, we don't need that. I have solar panels, where I used to. I live in a new house now. I don't anymore. But you get solar panels and you can kind of charge excess sunshine, or you can charge at night when there's a ton of clean energy, or in the day or whatever. But those options are fascinating. And so you combine the environmental impact with, and the environmentalist part, I think, is easier to understand. A lot of people who love the environment are driving electric vehicles. But the part that I try to focus on is telling my friends, if you're a car person, you shouldn't look at EVs as some bad thing. They're amazing. Like they're wildly fun to drive. And I'm hoping like Formula E and some of the new cars like the Lucid Air and the Model S Plaid and the Rivian, those halo kinds of cars will do a lot of good in the industry.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, I love the fact that your your understanding of engineering, because that's I think the critical thing. When I understood that in really energy efficiency, the energy efficiency of an electric motor versus an internal combustion engine. Because, I grew up with internal combustion. The first vehicle I ever drove was a go-kart powered by a lawnmower engine. And it was brilliant. I loved it. I kind of wish I still had it now, because it was so cool. But so I've grown up with that technology, and I understood it, and I've done if I have done it a couple of times, talks to schools where I will draw on a blackboard the rudiments of an internal combustion engine, and you can see if you can explain it and get a kid to understand how an internal combustion engine works. I was quite proud of myself. It was the only time I've ever done any decent teaching. But, I absolutely understand how that works, because I've had to rebuild them, because I had cheap old cars that broke down all the time. You'd snap a half shaft or a crankshaft or whatever. Those things go wrong. And that it's, when I think it's amazing how much more reliable combustion engines are now than when I was a child. They were, what does a car do? It drives along, then it breaks down. That was normal. And, the amount of times we were on holiday, and I can remember being on holiday with my brother and sister in the back of a hot car, and it would stop, and my dad would get out and lift the bonnet, and there would be steam, and I don't even know what happened. It would eventually start again. But that was such a common experience. And you're right. I mean, if you don't push an internal combustion engine to an extreme degree, they can now last an amazing, I think, and really incredible amount of time, considering what's going on. Billions of explosions taking place inside a cylinder. I mean, when you look at it from that point of view, it's a crazy system that's become normal.
It really is.
Yeah. And, an electric motor, no matter how, even if it's a rubbish, old, inefficient one, hugely more efficient with hugely less moving parts. It's just a simpler machine, really, isn't it? And it is the battery technology that's changed. That's what's made it possible, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think the batteries are the part that people are unsure of. But
yes,
they've come so far. And even now, I'll get comments, and I'm sure you guys do. I'll get comments from people on YouTube saying, "Oh, my iPhone doesn't last the whole day anymore after a couple of years. I don't want that for my car." It's like, you'd be surprised what thermal management and state of charge management can do. These cars are vastly more reliable than people think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, in a sense, our key role, in terms of what we're doing on Fully Charged is that education piece. Because certainly when I made the pilot of Fully Charged, no one knew then how long a lithium-ion battery pack would last. Not really. We hadn't had them long enough. We had them for 2 years, maybe, So when Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear here said, you'll have to throw the battery away after 3 years, I kind of wanted to disagree with him, but I wasn't 100% sure he might have been right. Yeah. And what's intriguing, we ought to try and get her back on the show. There's this wonderful woman who lives in South London who bought the car, the Nissan Leaf that he drove. He drove a Nissan Leaf saying you'll have to throw the battery away after 3 years. She bought that car from a dealership, and it was the same one he had. And I interviewed after she'd had it 7 years and had driven 50,000 miles on the same battery. I know she's still got it. I heard a few months ago she still drives it. She charges it. She was a nurse working in a hospital in South London, and she can charge it at work. She's got a space that she can't charge it at home, and she loves it. And that is the car. So now it's 10 or 11 years. It's still going. She still hasn't thrown the battery away, which is okay.
And we've come a long way since the first Leaf. The Leaf,
if you think has
some issues. It doesn't have very good thermal management and stuff. And
no,
you can't even compare that to the cars that you guys are reviewing today, coming out of China and Europe and America and stuff. It's night and day. So even I would say they're 10 times better than even that first Leaf.
Yes, but then because I'm very jealous because I have looked at, touched, and sat in a Rivian at Fully Charged Live last year, but I didn't drive one.
You should have come.
I know, don't. But so, I mean, it sounded like you were fairly impressed with it, but as a Tesla driver, is it comparable in terms of its software, its battery management, its drivetrain control, all those sort of things? It's a sophisticated electric car.
Yeah, I mentioned the dichotomy of having two cars in one. The Rivian is kind of the same thing, but to another level. That air suspension, you lower all the way down, and it's not a Tesla Model 3 performance, but it handles pretty well. It doesn't sway too much. And then you raise it all the way up, and seriously, it's like a monster truck. It's hard to get in and out of. It's amazing what you could do in that truck with just a couple of clicks. And as far as the comparison to if you're a Tesla driver, the Rivian will feel like the Tesla truck. It just the screen, the layout, the buttons, the general approach, even the steering wheel controls for mirror adjustments, it's almost identical. You will feel 100% right at home, which is funny because if you drove some other really good cars from legacy makers, like the ID4, for example, the ID4 feels like a normal car, not like a Tesla at all. So like if you were a Tesla driver, the ID4 might feel foreign. And I think this is the weird decision that everybody has to make in terms of the new companies are not adopting any old ways. They're going right into the electric future where there's no start button. Like, why is there a start button on a car? It doesn't make any sense. You just walk in and drive it away. Rivian doesn't have a start button. Lucid doesn't have a start button. Tesla doesn't have a start button. But the ID4, some of these older cars do. But if you're used to that kind of new age thing, the Rivian feels right at home. And even if you're not, you'll grow to love it very quickly.
You'll get used to it.
The UI is really zippy, it's responsive, vastly better than the legacy cars I've seen. The ID4 screen, for example, was definitely a little more slow to respond than the Rivian was. But overall, the Rivian is absolutely fantastic. I know they've been in the news lately, largely for some negative things, prices and stuff. You got to remember, this truck was unveiled. The world was a different place back then. We didn't have inflation that like we do now, and supply chain issues, and a global pandemic. I mean, I feel for them. I want them to make money on each car so they really succeed. But at the same time, it's not a cheap truck. It has 4 motors. I mean, it has 800 horsepower, and there's a lot to love. It's a really amazing truck.
Yeah. And I mean, because I hear occasionally, sort of market pundits pontificate about different companies. And certainly I heard a real sort of downer on Rivian recently. And I was going, that's a shame, because I did think that might be one that makes it. But then I've heard equally totally opposite reports. It's one of those really difficult ones that, I mean, it's a fascinating change in American the automotive industry in America has been a static beast for the last sort of 50 years. The same companies, and they bring out a new model that's got a different front or a slightly more sloping windscreen, tiny variations. And then suddenly there is, like Tesla is remarkable. That is a new car company that is now a global new car company, huge. Their Berlin factories just opened yesterday, I think. and they're already producing cars there, and they'll be producing 200,000 Teslas a year from that factory by the end of it's insane. That hasn't happened for 50 years. I mean, but then what I found fascinating and frustrating and occasionally depressing is Faraday Future, Lucid, Rivian, Aptera. I'm not going to remember. Canoe was fascinating. All these new exciting companies, but you then realize to actually become a large car manufacturer is a massive mountain. It's a mountain range you have to climb, isn't it? It's a huge thing.
The only thing harder is building aircraft.
Yes, now that's interesting.
And there's only room for like 2 companies in the world to do it. I mean, that's just the nature of it. And cars are similar. I think we're going to have some companies not make it. But I will say Lucid and Rivian to me are in a different category than everybody else.
Right.
Those are 2 really good companies. And I think we just have to remember Tesla 8 years ago, because that's kind of where they are now. They're building their first model, and they're not high volume, so they're going to be a little more less automation, maybe a little more manual stuff. And they have to prove it out and get to a ramp. Even the Model 3, we forget now because we think of Tesla as this juggernaut. But a couple of years ago, when I was first making YouTube videos on Tesla, they were struggling. Elon was sleeping in the factory.
Yeah.
So how quickly we forget. But I think if we give them a little bit of time it's one thing to build a really great product. Now you have to figure out how to make 1 million of them. Yeah. And Lucid and Rivian are both right there. I've driven both of them. They're better than anything out there from the gas world. Right. So they're good cars. They're worth building. We just have to be a little bit patient. And it is going to be a bumpy road because, it's really hard to build cars, like you said.
Yes, yeah. But then, because I saw the Lucid. It was driving around when I was in Los Angeles the last time I was there. And I can't even remember when that was, a while ago. And I was really impressed with the look of it because it's just a beautiful looking car. Absolutely stunning.
I agree.
So, but I've not been in it or driven it. So I'm now even more jealous that you've actually had a go in the Lucid. But you were impressed with it, were you?
Yeah, I think the Lucid as well. I think the front and the side is gorgeous. The back, I might change.
Right. I don't know it well enough to know what the back was like.
But I think it's a really striking car. And what I love is that these companies are not beholden to any past. They get to look at the clean sheet, and it's really remarkable what you can do. So a comp for the Lucid Air would be the Mercedes EQS. And the EQS doesn't have a front, which is bizarre to me. You're building a ground-up electric vehicle. Why on earth did you do this? In comparison, the Lucid frunk is massive. The only one I've ever seen bigger is the F-150 Lightning, which is truly massive.
But it's a huge vehicle,
It is a big vehicle, But the Lucid Air is kind of what's possible when you rethink everything and you start over. And I would highly encourage all the companies to take that approach because it's a new world. Don't bring the old baggage. It'll only hurt you long term.
Yeah. But then, so I've got to talk to you about this because day after tomorrow, we're going to film, which may have gone out by the time this is heard. Don't think so, though. But I can talk about it now. We're allowed to now. I'm going to film a company called Vertical Aerospace. Because, from having worked in the aerospace industry, I'm really intrigued to know what your take is on this. So I have now seen... I'm flying in an electric plane next week, but that's just the Pipistrel. It's a training plane. So that's been around for a while. That's not new. But we were filming a hydrogen fuel cell. We still haven't put this out yet because we want to make sure we get footage of it actually flying. Hydrogen fuel cell and battery powered small passenger plane. And that's there's so many different companies. It's very like sort of 5 years ago, Lucid, Faraday Future, Rivian, it's at that stage, but clearly something really big is happening. So we saw a life-sized mock-up, which we were not allowed to take pictures. We had to not do anything. We had to NDAs, all that stuff. But, now I can say safely a life-size mock-up of a 200-seat passenger aircraft with 2 wings, no tailplane. No upright thing at the back. 2 wings that twist, vertical takeoff. I think either 6 or 8 propeller motors on each wing, so a lot of them. So kind of like a giant drone. But this was life-size. It was huge. It was hanging up in a hangar, and we'd walked
people.
under it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd walked under it without seeing it. That when something is big enough for you not to notice, it was just sort of. And then when we saw it, what was that? But the fact that that's happening, and then the one we're seeing this week, Vertical Aerospace have done I think it's a 22-seat passenger plane. Again, the same notion, a turning wing that lifts. It doesn't need runways. That's the whole point. And it's for intercity flights. It will do 500-600 miles on a flight. That's and they say it'll be flying in 2025 and in service by 28. But if you've worked in the aerospace industry, I would imagine building a completely new aircraft with completely new propulsion. It's quite a big. Makes building a car look like that's like just making a garden chair out of some wood.
So first of all, let me just throw it out there. If there's ever any aerospace stuff like that, give me a call. I'd love to be there. Yeah. That'd be amazing. This sounds truly remarkable. One of my favorite quotes from the aviation world is, we in aerospace, we have a perfect track record. We've never left one up there. I've
not heard that before.
And, it's, it highlights something really interesting, which is take all the complications and complexities of a car, like even a Tesla today, as great as they are, on occasion you might get stranded, something happened, something blacked out. You can't really afford to have that happen with an aircraft. I remember in the aviation world when I was working with military aircraft, if you wanted to update the flight control computer software, on the Tesla, it happens like 10 times a year, 20 times a year, something like that. It might be a 3 to 5 year program to update the software. And the reason is because of the amount of validation testing and envelope testing that goes into it. So, it is, I think, like you said, take building a car and multiply it by 10 to 100, maybe even more, the amount of complexity that goes into it. This ties into a couple of things that I think are really interesting. A lot of people have been poo-pooing hydrogen as a kind of a pointless enterprise. We shouldn't be pursuing it. We shouldn't invest in it. And I've always disagreed, because what's interesting is you never really know. But if we have a abundance of various options available to us that are all being researched, you never know how things come together. So hydrogen, for example, with aviation makes a ton of sense, because hydrogen is very, very gravimetrically energy dense. The volumetric packaging of compressed tanks is a challenge, but that I bet you is at the center of all the design of the aircraft you saw, was probably entirely around how do you package cylindrical hydrogen tanks that you could compress to high levels safely and still have enough passenger space and cargo space like a conventional car, so an aircraft. So I think the really interesting thing about engineering is when you see something and you put on your engineering hat, you start to see why decisions were made. Is it cost? Is it weight? Is it reliability? And you start to kind of piece it all together. But I think the idea of a hydrogen powered, and there's going to be a battery aspect, because potentially you might need like quick inputs that a hydrogen fuel cell can't provide. So you have this buffer battery that just keeps replenishing from the hydrogen stack. I think that probably is the most realistic thing that we could build to replace aircraft of today. And to your point about even in 2028, timetable seems really aggressive. There's just so much testing. It's truly remarkable. And a car, the Tesla says, we're going to change the front fascia on the new Model S to make it more aerodynamic and get 20 more miles of range, and we're done. On an aircraft, you change one slope 2 degrees, and at the boundary between 500 and 550 miles an hour suddenly induces vortices that completely shed, and you lose flight actuation authority, and your airplane crashes. It's incredibly sensitive, everything, every little detail of it. So I hope they succeed. And I would love to know more. I will be watching that video when it comes out. It's super exciting.
No,
it is for sure.
Yes, it is. It is very exciting. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things, because there's another company, I think it is Electroflight. So they've often merged and changed. So I've kind of lost track. I need all my notes in front of me to remember. But that was they have actually achieved it. So Rolls-Royce were very involved in that. And this was to achieve a kind of airspeed record for an electric plane, which they've done. I don't know what it is. It's pretty fast. It's impressive. It's sort of Spitfire level speeds. But when I was talking to the engineers that worked on that, they were saying, there's a big challenge with the weight of batteries and everything, but you've got to remember how much stuff you have to put on a combustion engine to make it work when you're at 20,000 feet, because there's no air, there's no oxygen. So you've got to have all this extra heavy stuff. And you said with an electric motor, it doesn't matter. It can work in a vacuum. It's not, so they save so much complexity and therefore possible failure with the simplicity of an electric motor. I mean, they were very keen on that. And I guess that's the same with all the stuff they're developing now is, you don't have to worry about that. You might have hydrogen tanks and batteries, but you don't have to have, I've looked at aero engines and I can't recognize them as being, a combustion aero engine. I look at it, I go, I don't even know what that is. That's got too many pipes. I mean, you'd probably understand it, but it looks so complicated and huge, great big lump of stuff. Yeah.
You're talking about how much better cars are today than when you were a kid. How about airplanes? Like these like General Electric and Rolls-Royce aircraft, high bypass turbofan engines are truly remarkable. They can just run like a clock for thousands of hours
it's extraordinary, isn't it?
It's truly, truly impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with brilliant technologies. It becomes mundane and you don't then appreciate what it is because you just get on a plane, it just flies. I don't know, just does it for hours.
What a crazy thing that we could hop on a plane, just go to sleep, it's like a non-event. You're taking off from Earth at 35,000 feet and flying to another part of the world in hours. And it's completely mundane, right? It's not even an event anymore. Unless I'm flying into a city I've never been to before. I don't even, we'll get there when we get there. It's not a big deal. The challenge really is the energy density of batteries and our sustainable future. My Tesla Model 3 has a 75 kilowatt hour battery pack. And just from an energy perspective, and that battery pack weighs, almost 1,000 pounds, 400 kilograms, something like that. I can hold an equivalent amount of energy in 2.5 gallons of gasoline, which weighs like 14 pounds. Yeah. And that's what we're up against. Now, to be fair, they're very inefficient. So even though 2.5 gallons is all you need, so much of that is wasted. Fine, maybe you need 5 gallons, but even 5 gallons is way lighter. And that's what we're fighting with. On a car, we figured that out. Like build them from the ground up, put them on the floor. But with aircraft, it's going to be a challenge. And that's why I think hydrogen is interesting for aviation.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, one of the notions that I heard, that was an engineer at Airbus Industries, because we went to see the first electric flight across the English Channel. They used the same airports that Blériot used back in whenever it was, 1904 or whatever. And it did it was a bit of a non-event because it was like, oh my God, they're going to fly over the channel. It just took off and flew over the channel in a few minutes. It was so quick. But that was an Airbus, that was like a 2-seater Airbus, a ducted fan. It had 2 ducted fans on the back. And that was one of those experiences, which was a bit like the first time I went in an electric car. And it's that you're really aware of the lack of vibration and noise. That was, the pilot got in, they closed the cockpit, and you heard this really, I can't use another word other than quite pathetic sound, hairdryer, like a hair, like really, that's not very, and I was standing right behind it. And he was doing tech, you could see all the flaps going up and down and the rudder doing everything. And then it went, and it suddenly, I was blown off my feet. And my face full of dust as this thing, as he actually opened it up. And you then go, God, that is extraordinary. That was, just the most extraordinary. Then it took off very, very quietly. The annoying thing was it was surrounded by helicopters filming it. So you couldn't really tell but it is very quiet. But one of the engineers there said, this is the reason we're doing this. We're never going to be able to, for instance, fly from London to New York with a battery-powered plane. That's daft. That's not going to happen in any of our lifetimes. It's got to be some other way of powering it. But what we can do is possibly get a large passenger jet up to about 10,000 feet and absolutely use every ounce, every electron that we've got stored either in hydrogen or in batteries. And then you have a tiny, by today's standards, tiny jet engine that pushes you across the Atlantic at a fraction of the fuel use. And then when you're at 35,000 feet and you start to descend, the ducted fans turn into generators and you produce electricity. And when you've landed, you've almost recharged your batteries. That was the thing. And then I said, how much electricity would you need to get an A380 off the ground? And he said, I don't know, but it's about 5 gigawatt hours. It's a battery the size of a suburb. That's what you, at the moment, that's what you realize, how we've been blessed in a way by fossil fuel, by that phenomenal energy density is staggering. It really is.
Yeah, and we discovered it so early on. We jumped right to fossil fuel, and it turned out to be so good, which is a blessing and a curse. It enabled aviation to happen so quickly. Yeah, the golden age of aviation. I mean, it was just in a couple of decades. We went from, the Wright brothers to, the F-15 and the, like fighter jets that are flying at 1,800 miles an hour. Yeah. But at the same time, the curse part of that is it's hard to replace because it is so good at those kinds of things. Yeah. But maybe there's a future where we have, compressor stages, and we have, instead of a ducted fan, which is what most electric aviation is today, what if we had like a proper turbo fan, a system that takes in air and compresses it and shoots it out the back, allowing higher speeds, and it was hydrogen powered? Just replace the fuel with hydrogen. That's possible. Do
you think that gives? I've not thought so. Effectively, a jet engine that runs on hydrogen is that a physical feasibility? I have no idea. I don't know how.
I don't think we have any functional ones, but it's absolutely possible. Right. I mean, you have your fuel that could, run the compressor blades, and it's possible. And I think it just comes down to cleverness, right? And reimagining the airplane. Like a hydrogen powered A380, for example, will not look like today's A380s. Maybe it'll be completely and fundamentally different, right? This is the Rivian Lucid argument. Like clean sheet of paper. It won't look the same. It'll be a fundamentally different craft. But could we see that in our lifetimes? Wouldn't that be interesting? I mean, aviation is a big part of the global carbon emissions. So it kind of feels like it matters. But even if we could what if we could replace the London to Paris flight, the shorter hops? What if we could replace some of those?
I think we can. Yeah.
Exactly. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We could start slow and build up.
Yeah. Because there was, we were trying to get Elliot to go in it, but the company went bankrupt, or the guy who owned it went to prison. It was all a bit dodgy. But there was a single seat, fully autonomous drone flying between two buildings in China. And there is footage of it on YouTube. And a journalist just got in this thing. There's no controls. You can't do anything. You sit in it in a little bubble, and it's like a big drone, and it just takes off and flies to the next building. And it was flying over people's houses. There was it was a fairly terrifying prospect. But that I can see those happening. I mean, there is one currently on test in, I think it's in Dubai, flying from a hotel in the downtown part of the city to the airport. And it's done now tens of thousands of trips with no one in it. It doesn't have anybody in it. And, you would understand that because I've just been having a discussion about autonomous cars, and which is a topic I wouldn't mind touching on with you. But the engineer I spoke to said flying something autonomously is hugely easier than driving on the ground, because you've got so many other choices. There's something in the way, go down. There's something in the way, down, go up, go left, go right, stop, go backwards. You've got a lot more choice of where you can go than a vehicle. But if there is a fully autonomous drone test flight available, I'd like you to do it first.
That's very gracious of you.
If that's okay.
What the heck, we'll see what my wife says about that. But that could be fun.
Yes, is there electric flight? Because there seems to be it's a real buzz in this country. There's quite a few companies doing it. I would have assumed this was absolutely a Californian thing. I could imagine this stuff happening there first. But I mean, are you aware of companies in California that are developing different forms of electric flight?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I've heard of quite a few. I think Uber is investing in some
Right.
stuff to have like fully autonomous air taxis and things. It feels a little bit pie in the sky at this point, just because
Yeah.
it is such a departure, it will require a lot of. It's not just the technology, but it's also like the FAA or the aviation
Yeah.
authorities and legislation, and there's going to be a fair bit of uh, it sounds like a good idea now because our skies are very free and open. But
Yeah.
the minute Uber is building air taxis and so is everybody else, it's going to become just the opposite. It'll feel
It could
like
be unbearable.
you can't even enjoy a nice day outside because there'll be
No.
sound and noise and fury and
Yeah.
even an electric motor. If you've heard a drone fly,
Well, a
just
propeller makes a
moving
noise.
that
Doesn't
volume
matter.
of air makes a ton of noise. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like cultural, and I've always said the hardest things to do are the things that require like a cultural shift.
Yeah.
Tell somebody ditch your gas car, buy an electric car. That's not that hard. It's a car. You sit in it, you move around. But you tell someone to ditch their plastic straw and bring a metal straw from home. That's not going to happen. No one's going to do that. That's just the hardest thing to make people change their like behavior patterns.
Yeah.
So that's my issue with that. That's why I'm not quite so bullish on that sort of thing. Is I think there's non-technological aspects at play that are tougher to navigate, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it's a huge challenge. I just remembered the name of the company that did the hydrogen fuel cell. They're Zero Avia, and they're bizarrely in they're doing test flights in an airfield very near where I live. So we hopefully will film a bit more with them. But yeah, I would quickly love I don't know if you've had any experience. Well, you've had experience because of a Tesla, but on sort of autonomous driving, you don't have FSD in your. Do you have that in your?
No.
Because the videos I've seen of that are genuinely impressive. I mean, and some of the early stuff I saw, it was quite a long time ago, where you would watch. It was actually a BMW i3 at CES a few years ago. I saw a demonstration where a guy drove one into the front of a hotel with a car park next to it, and he just got out and left it, and the car folded its wing mirrors in and drove itself and parked itself. Then he came out and pressed an app, and the car drove and opened up next to him, which I quite like that idea. But that was probably nearly 10 years ago, or certainly 8 years ago. And I haven't seen any cars driving around my local supermarket car park parking themselves. But it strikes me as a kind of, again, a bit of a fantasy. And what is the genuine? I mean, I hate to be a skeptic about it, but I can't help thinking, what's the point? There's an element of it.
Yeah, I think people conflate electric cars and autonomy together because Tesla has just done that. I mean, the two are kind of hand in hand. But I think that's a mistake because I think we need electric cars now, and autonomy will follow. That's kind of the way I see it. So it's kind of and there's nothing precluding a gas car from being self-driving. It's not like you need an electric car to do this or something. There's like a lot of misconceptions, but yeah, I use autopilot on the freeway and it's remarkable. It has completely changed the nature of. My parents live in the Bay Area from San Diego. Right. That's about a 450-mile drive. And before, when I drove my gas car and drove myself, I'd be exhausted. I'd get there, Mom, I love you. I'm going to bed. I'm tired. Yeah. But now I'm actually pretty refreshed because the car drives itself. I have my hand on the wheel and I'm paying attention. But I can look over at my wife or have a conversation, and I don't feel the need to have to constantly watch the road. So autopilot is amazing on the freeway. City driving is a lot tougher, and there's just so many variables. There's a human variable generally. Like there's a child could run out at any moment. There's all these things. And to your point about being more difficult, it is vastly more difficult, even than like SpaceX has the rockets that land themselves from low Earth orbit. That is an easier problem to solve by several orders of magnitude than a self-driving car, which sounds crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
You see a rocket. It sounds. I mean, it's one of those biases we have where the more outlandish something seems, it seems to be a more difficult problem. But in this case, the car that we know and love and we drive is one of the hardest challenges to do. It will happen. We're going to have self-driving cars. I don't know when. I'm not smart enough to know or predict any of that. But I think there's going to be maybe like an infrastructure, maybe cars will talk to each other. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But we're going to have laws and regulations to protect ourselves. Because right now, Tesla will make a change, roll out their software, and they're just running, right? That's like aviation, I think, is the model that we should follow for self-driving cars, because you don't just make a new software update, roll it out to the A320s, and then just go like, hey, there's Pandora on your in-flight entertainment, new flight. These things go through a rigorous process, and right now it's very Wild West, which is how things always start. But eventually, we're going to have really good measures and really good testing suites to go put cars through the paces, and maybe even get like a write-off, like a sign-off from some authority that says, yeah, your latest version of software goes through our test cases and everything looks good, and you're approved to push the update to drivers or something. So there's just a lot that has to happen first, and I do think it'll happen, and I think it'll happen. My time frame is like maybe 5 or 10 years or something like that. But what Tesla's doing is leading the way, and they're showing what you can do with machine learning and neural networks and computer vision, which will be a big part of it, because you have to be able to see a sign. Like, you can argue the value of radar and other things as well, but you have to have vision. There's no way cars can work without it. So a very complicated problem. Arguably one of the greatest challenges right now in engineering. Really quick before I let you go, I wanted to tell you, you mentioned about having the vision to see a computer and see something you could do with it in the future. That kind of vision is really remarkable. And I think you did that with Fully Charged. You saw this thing called YouTube, and you decided to put that pilot up there. And once you see somebody else do it, okay, I could do that. I could make a video about a car and but that first person who does it, truly a visionary. So thank you for making all this possible.
I'm a classic British middle class person who finds praise very difficult to deal with emotionally. I need to go and see my therapist. I need to work it through. But that's very kind of you. I really appreciate it, Ricky. That's very kind of you. And I can't wait to meet you in person in the autumn in San Diego. And it's been a long time since, I can't remember when I think it was 2002. I think I was in San Diego. It's quite a long time ago.
Oh, you're going to love it. Looking
forward
Fully Charged live North America, San Diego. That's going to be a highlight of my year.
It's going to be, it's because you've met Dan, but when Dan first suggested, when we went to Austin, and he said, I think we should do Fully Charged in Austin. I went, you're crazy. We don't understand the American market. No one's going to come. It's going to be a disaster. It'll be a nightmare. I was wrong. I now shut up. I don't say anything. I let Dan do it. He's definitely got his. He knows how to do those things.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. No, really good to talk to you, Ricky. Thank you so much, and we'll see you. Well, viewers of Fully Charged, we'll see you very soon.
Yes, Rivian.
Really hope you enjoyed that. What a dude. What a dude. And it's true. My missus, I think she just thought he was gorgeous. I didn't want to rub it in too much. Didn't want to blow smoke up his ass. I don't think that's a very nice expression for an English chap to say. I shouldn't say things like that. That's it. Please do subscribe to Fully Charged Show and have a look at the Fully Charged channel, on the YouTubes. And any information about anything we're doing is on fullycharged.show. Live shows in Farnborough in the UK, in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, in San Diego, California, and in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia in 2023. Sorry, I shouldn't do it that. I shouldn't go on like that. I should just do it normally. But I'm very excited about all of them. That's it. Subscribe, I've done that. Yeah. Patreon. Yeah. Anything like that. Please watch them. Tell your mates. That's the most important thing. Tell your friends and family about the Fully Charged Show and the abundance of beautifully, ethically produced organic goodness that we supply on a weekly basis. That's it. I'm going to shut up. If you have been, thank you for listening.